let's clear this up once and for all. Rent to rent is not illegal. Rent to rent is not subletting, and rent to rent is not a scam. But all these myths give rent to rent a bad name, and that's the reason why people like you don't take action and don't change your lives. Rent to Rent 2.0 has changed everything. And in this video, I'm gonna break down step by step what you need to know, what you can ditch, and how you could build a 6 or 7 figure rent to rent business and completely transform your life. So if you're serious about building massive cash flow without the huge capital, mortgages, and needing amazing credit, this is the strategy for you, and this model that I'm gonna share can change it all. Before we break down rent to rent, it's important to understand traditional property investment. So traditional property investment looks a little bit like this. You buy a property, okay, and you may have heard of it. It's called buy to let, and the idea is you buy a property. Now, the average UK property price at the moment is around 300,000. And what you would need to do in order to buy this house is you would need around a £75,000 deposit. That is 25%. You're going to need around a 15k stamp duty, which is 5%. Oof, painful. And then on top of that, you're going to have additional fees. And if you're going to do any work, which I highly recommend in most situations, you're also going to need those refurb costs. So as you can see, before you know it, you are going to be investing a massive £100,000 in order to do this. All right. If you've got £100,000, comment below, because most of you will not. And even if you did have £100,000, you could only do one of these. So the big problem with traditional buy-to-let is it's not scalable. All right. It's a slow game. It's more for long-term legacy wealth. And if you are sat there looking to replace your £5,000 a month income, it's going to take a long time. So this is traditional buy-to-let. Okay. In rent to rent, you're not buying the house. I know what you're thinking. You're like, what? Well, how does that work? Well, all we do in rent to rent is we essentially rent the property, okay, and then rent it out to tenants or guests. So as you're not buying the property, you don't need to worry about the deposit. You don't need to worry about the stamp duty. The fees are pretty much non-existent because you should have your agreement template so you can rinse and repeat, and you're not going to spend an arm and a leg on the property itself. So imagine this, guys. Imagine the rent-to-rent property. I love this. And when I first heard of this, by the way, I couldn't believe it. It sounded too good to be true to me. In rent-to-rent, all that we're actually going to do is pay the landlord their first month's rent. Let's say, I know, you're looking at maybe 2k, which is the equivalent of the mortgage on the buy-to-let. And then all we're actually going to do is we're just going to furnish the property, okay? And maybe some light renovations. But when I say light, I'm talking about less than a few £1,000s. So all of a sudden, for this model, you might be able to do this for 5 to 10k. So let me ask you a question. If you had £100,000 now, would you rather one buy to let, or would you rather do 10 rent to rent? Now let's talk cash flow, because one of the things I love about rent to rent is, for me, it's the king of cash flow. Now check this out, team. Most of you, if you want to get into property, it's because you want more time. It's because you want more freedom. It's because you may want more income. So it's all about the monthly income. If you're earning £5,000 a month, you want to replace £5,000 a month. If you're earning £10,000 a month, you want to earn £10,000 a month. Now, the big problem with buy to let in many situations is the cash flow. After you've put £100,000 in, you've got a 75k deposit in there and a bigger mortgage. You're probably looking at £225,000 loan mortgage that you're paying the payments on. In many cases, you're finding that you may earn £300 monthly cash flow from a traditional buy to let, and that, for me, if you're trying to replace £3,000, that means that you need 10 of those. Okay, now 10 times 100 grand is £1 million. So in order for you to really hit your goal, you would need £1 million. Not good. Very slow. Not feasible for people like me and you. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Simon, surely it's better to own the property than just rent to rent it. And you would kind of have a point, but it depends what your goal is. If you love your job, if you've got loads of time with your family, if you've got loads of freedom, if you love your boss, and if you can see yourself doing what you're doing for the next 20 or 30 years, taking that retirement, happy days, sure, it may be best just working towards doing one of these and sitting on it for one day. But if you want your time back, want to be your own boss, are sick of your job, all right, want to travel more, don't want to be, controlled by annual leave allowances, this is just not going to get you to that goal unless you've got £1 million or more. £1 million only gets you to 3,000 quid. Another sort of thing that I just want to touch on here is, okay, well, you don't have to do a single let. You could buy a property and then put it on Airbnb. By the way, Airbnb, serviced accommodation, you may hear it referred to as SA, just a posh fancy term for Airbnb, booking.com. So in the Airbnb scenario, sure, you could still earn big money. You could still maybe earn 1,000 quid. That gets better, okay, because now you only need £300,000 rather than £1 million. But the fact of the matter is, this is a slower, more long-term strategy. If you want to build cash flow, I recommend starting with rent to rent to the point where you could then recycle that money, then buy loads of these, right? And just for the record, I have reinvested most of my rent to rent income into buying properties and doing either HMO or SA. I do not do this model because personally, I think it's a waste of time. So now you've got the concept. How exactly does it work? I know what you're thinking. How does it work? Well, here's the thing. The first thing you need to do is rent to rent is you need to find a property. And this property, all right, is going to be the property that we're looking to control. So I just want to keep this super simple because a lot of people overcomplicate this stuff. This is you, okay? You need to find a property, and the other side of the property is a landlord, all right? You want to get into property. In many cases, these landlords, they just want to exchange their property for what? They just want to get money, all right? It's ironic, actually. We want the properties. The people with the properties just want the money. Really ironic. So all you've got to do is find a property with a landlord that just wants the money and wants nothing to do with the property, and you are winning. You then pay the landlord the rent. Let's say it's 1,000 quid. You pay the landlord 1,000 quid. Landlord is happy. Landlord's feeling really excited, feeling good. You are happy because you now got the keys to this property. And then what you then do is you then rent this property out on either a serviced accommodation basis, a HMO basis, sometimes a social housing. I've even seen people just rent it back to a family, which is basically, I'll put a fam, hold tight all my fam, and rent it to a family, and the returns might be less. However, the beautiful thing about it is the family might stay in there for 2 years, not give you any headache. You might only make, 300 quid, but it's still the model. Now, people say, well, is that illegal? Can you do that? Isn't that subletting? Well, the thing is, before I turn the page actually, if you did this in a traditional agreement known as an AST, this would be illegal. All right? But we don't use an AST, and the landlord is fully aware of what we are doing. So we use a specialist agreement and the landlord knows exactly what's going on. They are happy. So this is truly a win-win-win. By the way, if this sounds good and it's something that you want to do, you want to learn more about, hit the link below to download my 12 steps Rent to Rent 2.0 business setup checklist so you can set up to do this today. Now, like anything, like any investment, I do not want to say that this is without its downsides. This is easy, you know. I'm not that guy. And the fact of the matter is, there are some risks. Okay, let's talk about them, man. Cards on the table. What are the risks? Well, risk number one, let's do it over here. Risk number one is what happens if the landlord changes their mind? What happens if they decide, I want my property back? All right. Well, don't worry. Okay. Don't worry, because we're going to be using an agreement that is absolutely bulletproof. And the fact of the matter is, if you do your job and pay the landlord the rent, remember, the landlord just wants to exchange their property, their asset, for cash. So as long as you follow through on that, why would they change their mind? Maybe they want to sell it. Guess who would find out first? Guess who might just buy that property anyway? So great way to make connections. The second big risk I hear people talking about is what happens if you take the property on? You got the property, but oh no, you can't find tenants. Big problem, because if you are committing to paying them the rent and then you don't get any rent, what's going to happen? Well, the good news is this. You always need to make sure you choose a property in the correct area. I talk about the rent to rent radius. In fact, I've got content on this channel on that. So you've got to pick the right property. But once again, worst case scenario, guess what? You know our trusted agreement? It means that if it doesn't work, we can give 2 months notice, even though the contracts are 5 years, and give the property back to the landlord. Genius. And another common risk I hear people talk about is, well, Simon, this sounds good, but isn't this a lot of work? Like, I can't think of anything worse than having all these tenants and Airbnbs and stuff going on, and maintenance and plumbing issues and all this stress. Well, I always say this. How many hours a week does the average person work? 37 and a half, 38 hours. Well, let me put it like this. I've got mentees that now have 10, 20 properties. Okay. In fact, I've got a lovely mentee that's just got 2 properties and making her £6,500 a month. And she tells me she works 3 hours per week managing the 3 properties, 2 or 3 properties. I can't remember. 2 or 3 properties, 3 hours a week. So what's better? Is it 3 hours a week or 38 hours a week? And keep in mind, she's doubled her previous income. So you're earning double the money for what? 10% of the time. So guys, work is relative. Is it 100% passive? No, but it's a lot more passive than your day job. Okay, so Simon, this sounds good. I'm kind of in, but I've heard of rent to rent. So what is rent to rent 2.0? Well, look, rent to rent 2.0. Okay, rent to rent 2.0 is when you take it to the next level. I'm talking about building a 7-figure rent to rent empire. I'm talking about high quality property, not just the tired stuff. I'm talking about how can you get the best quality property out there. I'm talking about how can you scale so that landlords actually are queuing up to give you more and more properties. You know, in my first year, I did 20 deals, and thereafter, I was being offered 10 deals per month and just able to go and go and go. I'm talking about building team. And I'm talking about if you do this correctly, eventually, you will turn these properties into an absolute empire of properties you do own. All right, all through following the big rent to rent 2.0 thesis, massive scale, then reinvest in properties you do own, which is the ultimate aim for long-term legacy wealth. Okay, cool. So how many deals do you need to get out of your 9 to 5? Well, it's really simple. Whatever your monthly take home is, let's say 4K, you just want to divide that by around £1,000 on average. That's the average income we see. Up north, sometimes a bit less. Down south, I've got deals making as high as £3,000 or £4,000 a month in central London, okay? So all you do is divide your salary by 1K, and that's how many deals you're gonna need. This example, just 4 deals. And what if I told you that you could get 4 deals in a matter of months? You won't be the first, you won't be the last. So if your salary is £4,000, all you do is divide it by £1,000, which shows you just need 4 property deals, all right? So how long would that take? Well, in our community, on average, we see 10 and a half viewings gets 1 property deal. So you're literally talking about 40 viewings maximum. And this is maximum 40 viewings. You should be able to do 5 to 6 per week. How does that sound to you? Literally go and view 40 properties over the next few weeks or months, and you replace your income, and you are on the start of scaling to a 6-figure and 7-figure rent-to-rent business. Simple.